Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MSP 1337. For those of you that were with us last week, you may have heard my voice pitch shift. Maybe I sound a little bit like Mickey Mouse. To be fair, I was in Orlando. It was IT Nation. So Disney and my voice probably go hand in hand. This week is kind of on the tail end of IT Nation wrapping up and some conversations that were had at IT Nation. And then this morning on an MSP Ignite Secure Outcomes Integrator call, it's not an epiphany, but it was this probably needs to have some attention attached to it. And I've asked Charles Love, who is part of that integrator group, to help navigate what we're calling control paralysis. When an MSP tells me that they've been working on, software inventory and they're hoping to get it done in the next few months, red flags go up. When someone says they're working on vendor management and they're going to need another 2 to 3 weeks to finish it up, I've come to this one conclusion, and Charles can help me here. What is the enemy of good? Do nothing? Yeah. Or the enemy of good, I think, is perfection, right? Like, I think if you strive for perfection and you can't stop until you have this epitome of perfect, well, then you just keep going. So, Charles, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being on as always. Let's kick it off with the analogy that you gave that maybe will help our audience take a different look, whether they're going through the Trustmark or they're just going through CIS or fill in the blank framework. The way you described it, I think, makes it a whole lot easier to navigate.
Yeah, so let's kind of recap that little conversation. I'm happy to be here as always, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, so when we're in peer group, we talk to people who say, "Oh my God, I'm stuck on this one thing, and I've been on this one thing for 6 months, or 6 weeks, or six
Sure.
days. It doesn't really matter." And I'm like, "Well, damn, I spent like a couple hours on that one. Why are you stuck on that for so long?" And you're really deep into it, and you dig deep into it, and you find out they're going through analysis paralysis, right?
Right.
That's a word that you and I use at Untangled like a lot,
Yeah.
um, where you want it to be perfect before you launch it,
Right.
right? Where name your auto manufacturer, whatever. When they make a car, it's darn good. It ain't perfect, and they ship it,
Yeah.
right? Windows get shipped. iPhone, iOS, the newest one gets shipped. And then what do? They fix it. They little increment fixes to address little increment things. If Apple wanted to make an iPhone that was perfect, the damn thing would never be launched, right? We wouldn't be launching rockets and catching them midair,
Right.
right? We're gonna blow up a few rockets along the way.
Looking down on the launch pad as the rocket is rising.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we run into a lot in peer group with a lot of these, I don't care if you're doing Trustmark or CIS or whatever, is everyone wants everything to be perfect before it launches.
Yeah.
So there's 100 and something odd controls you got to work through, and we're still stuck on six because internally we're arguing if the bullet should be a number bullet or if it should be a like a dot bullet, right? So I don't know how many more times we have to discuss numbers versus dots on a
Right.
bulleted list, right? And I say that as a joke, but that's it's kind of
Or
like a
I mean,
part
it's
of
like
it.
policies, right? We'll write a policy and be like, is this the right font? I haven't put my letterhead in here. And it's like, oh, awesome. It also doesn't support anything that you're doing.
Yeah, so like I came across this. So I've gone through CIS controls 2.5 times now. We're almost done with the third time. And I found myself when I was doing the second time around, I found a new format I like. I was like, oh, this format looks so much better. And then what do? I go back to one and I update that format and I go back to two. And then 6 hours later, I'm like, why am I doing this? Right? The auditor doesn't care if I'm in Times Roman, just as long as it's not in Comic Sans, I guess, right?
And
Like,
wingding is not good.
well, and truth be told, the pretty thing I'm writing into like a Word document or whatever, I'm just going to copy and paste the contents into my GRC,
Right.
right? So then you get people stuck in the GRC going, Well, do I use GRC A, B, C? Well, this vendor gives it to me for free. Yeah, so does 12 other ones, right? So everyone
And oh
just
wait,
gets
I have
stuck.
Excel. I have Excel. Why can't I use Excel?
Yeah, like everyone gets stuck. So just go, right? It could be ugly. The ship can go sideways or
As long as it
Windows can blue
floats.
screen. Exactly. So the analogy I kind of came up with is in 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 my experience in 25 plus years of being in IT, as long as I know what the end goal is supposed to be,
Yeah.
I can get there, right?
Right.
So if the server needs to be 2022, and I know what 2022 looks like, and I'm running 2008, God forbid, I know how to get it. I know how to step it from 2008 to 2012.
Right.
I know how to get it there because I know the end goal of it.
Right.
So let's kind of dumb this down. The result is a cookie. Okay. Now, notice I said a cookie. I didn't say a chocolate chip. I didn't say snickerdoodle. I didn't even
Right.
say an Oreo, right?
Whoa, whoa,
But
whoa, whoa. That
yeah,
just don't go with
yeah,
Oreos is dangerous. That's almost like
yeah,
two cookies in one.
three or yeah, it's like a sandwich or whatever you want to call it. But um, it's kind of like the hot dog. The hot dog is a whatever. That's a
Yeah.
whole other conversation.
Like steak.
Um, yeah, but the end goal here with just call it any compliance guide you're working on, any control, whatever. What I see a lot of my peers struggle with is they don't realize or they've never seen the end result, which is a cookie. So they're trying to engineer their version of a cookie, right?
Yeah.
Where if I go, hey, here's what it's supposed to look like, well, I can figure out how to get there, right? So everyone is arguing, or not really arguing, but everyone is stuck on how much sugar am I supposed to do, right? Is it a gluten-free cookie, or is it, just all these crazy things that, oh,
They're
just give me
more
a
worried
cookie.
about their cookie looking like the cookie that they saw in the magazine or how you make cookies
Yes.
versus how they're going to make cookies. And then we have no problem arguing over, well, we're only a 5% MSP. We're not a 12% MSP. And now you're going down a
Yeah.
completely different cookie strategy because, well, my oven is smaller than your oven.
Well, so here's the thing. I didn't say it's an edible cookie. I just
Fair.
said it's a cookie, right? So what people do is they get stuck on, I want to make this thing the best so I never have to go back to it again.
You want the
Where,
Martha Stewart version of the cookie.
yeah, but you haven't had somebody judge your cookie yet,
Right.
right? And so like when it comes to Trustmark, which we're in the process of going through, I'm not going to say our policies are perfect. They're okay, but I can't worry about what a team of auditors are going to read and
Yeah.
interpret from the data I'm putting in. So I'm going to do what I feel is the best. So with various platforms, we're given all of the ingredients, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like if I were to give my 19-year-old a bunch of ingredients and say make something, he's like, I'm going to make a mess, right? Because he's not going to know. Like, what do you want me to make? Am I making a cookie? Am I making a cake? Am I making a
Right.
brick? Like, what's happening here? So, like, this is where peer groups are so important. I absolutely have called Mike Stewart and said, "Hey, I'm totally stuck. Can I
Yeah.
copy your homework?" Right?
Yeah. And
Where I not so much. Let me get a copy of your thing, and I'm just gonna change,
well,
find replace
well,
anchor
right.
with Showtech.
Because, yeah, there's things that you do that they don't do. And so all of a sudden, hey, how come you have this column in your spreadsheet? And you're like, well, because we have these vendors. And you're like, well, we don't have those vendors.
For sure, but that is me seeing the cookie,
Right.
right? So when I call Mike and I go, "Hey, show me how you're handling this," it's the aha moment, right? Where I'm like, I've been so focused on bullet points versus number things.
Yeah.
You just said we do this thing. Here's the information, and I'm like, you probably spent 20 minutes on it. He goes, yeah, and I've been spending 2 days on it, right?
Well,
So
I think we can add to the cookie analogy that I think might help this because I think right now we're talking about all these things that still turn out to be a nasty cookie. You ever have everybody's had as Christmas is right around the corner, everybody's had sugar cookies, right? And there's lots of traditions where people get together, decorate sugar cookies, go to a store, go to a Starbucks, they've got this beautifully decorated sugar cookie. The reality is when you get together with kids to make sugar cookies, it looks like Frankenstein threw up on a sugar cookie, right? But the
Yep.
reality is they all still taste the same. They all taste like sugar cookies. And all you want to make sure that you get is one that has plenty of frosting on it. And who cares what it looks like, right? And I think that's part of the problem right now. We're more worried about what we look like than what we're doing.
Yeah, it goes back to analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah,
I have 100 controls to write. Like I can't even get through my emails in one day. You want me to write 100 controls?
sure.
So what I've been doing is I've been working with the guy who's helping Showtech on this, and I say, here are three things I want you to focus on this week. Just three, right? And this way it's not the 100 something, it's just a three. And you know what?
Yeah.
If I give him 3 to 5 small little things I want you to do, whatever, it's accomplishment. It's not trying to boil the ocean. It's taking a cup out of the ocean and boiling said cup.
And I think the other way that I would also put some challenges to those going through this is give yourself a time cap to be done and move on, not to I'm going to come back to this again later. Just say, hey, I'm going to work on control one for an hour. I'm going to do my asset inventory. And if I get one or two of the safeguards in there actually done, great. But I'm going to move on after this. I am going to go look at control two and then control three, but I'm not going to spend more than 30 minutes to an hour on each of these so that I can at least wrap my head around what is it that we are doing or are not doing versus until I have satisfied every single thing inside this control to a level of perfection that my mom and dad would be proud of, I'm going to still be in this control. And it's a normal problem to have, right? We see this across the board. Nobody wants unhappy clients. You don't want your kids turning in not their best effort when it comes to homework. But the reality is, this isn't homework. This isn't about you getting graded on your work. This is about you recognizing that you have to start with something. And as it matures over time, as you master the content, you will start producing masterpieces. It's another analogy would be like being in a band and saying, I'm going to play the trumpet. If you've never played the trumpet before, nobody in that band wants you in the band with them. But as you
Or
continue
hurt
to
it.
learn, yes,
Yeah. Or hurt like no, but that's what it is, right? Like here's an instrument and then they take the trumpet and they're yelling into the open part, right?
the
Like, no, no,
bell.
no, that's not how it
Yeah,
goes, sport. It goes
right.
the other way,
Flip it around.
right?
Binoculars.
Yeah.
Don't look through the wrong end of binoculars. You'll never get anything done.
Yeah, but that's just something that so many people are so focused on is absolute perfection. And I'm not saying it needs to be junky, but chances are 90% of the controls you're already doing, it's just not documented, right? So Showtech had a bit of a stall for 6 months
Yeah,
because I was giving process questions to the text,
right,
right? And it took me a while to realize they don't know how the magic is done. They just get to benefit from the mat. They don't know vendor management. They don't know,
right.
all that kind of fun
They
stuff.
use the vendor. Yeah,
They log in, they do their thing, they
sure.
close their ticket, right? So when it comes to like my position with the whole ecosystem with doing this, I'm here for guidance. I'm here to dictate or to help articulate, not really dictate, the magic of the things that we do. I absolutely look at vendors yearly, things like that. You and I, we talked about this on the podcast many times. The techs at the office have no unearthly idea that I renew contracts every year. And to
Right.
be honest, up until we've done this, I didn't even have it documented. So
Well,
now it's documented, and then we go forward.
so let's go back in time. So I actually was just talking about this internally. We are talking about, sort of the readiness path that someone needs to be on when it comes to CIS top 18 or the trust mark. And you can look at it through two lenses. You can look at it to where you say, I'm adopting this framework which will help you look at what you have that's chaotic or not mature enough, and you need to go back and fix it. Or there's the flip side of it is instead of pursuing the framework as you look at it, you're like, oh, I got a lot of things to get in order in my house. What I think is really interesting is that for the most part, the hangups are tied to, do we have leadership in place? Is governance intact? And is it, as an MSP, like you mentioned peer groups, like peer groups are the things that you've ironed out, like, oh, that's how I should have my chart of accounts structured. Oh, I need to hire when I hit that certain threshold. And those components that if they're not properly structured and mature, then tackling things like cybersecurity as a way in which to, bolster your own cyber hygiene and be able to successfully deliver cybersecurity services to your clients is just going to be you're selling a product or a service, and you're still stacked like a house of cards because as a business, as an operation, you're not ready for it. And I'm not saying don't go do those things, but I think as you look at your own business, and that's why I wanted to ask you, like, you talked about, the 6 month stall. You talked about, a signing process or that you didn't have documented. Like, if you look back over the years, I mean, we've been doing the MSP space for a very long time. Even when you came into Untangled, what do you think was the number one thing that kept us from being successful with cybersecurity initiatives?
Process and procedure,
Huh.
right?
And
Repeatable.
people recognizing that they were responsible for making those things come true.
Yeah, for sure. But everything is only as good as the information you have at your hand, right? So today, right? And this is why people stall. Microsoft just dropped a major bombshell today. Um, they're like, hey, as of April 1st, monthly NCE agreements now will have a 5% increase, or you can prepay for the year, right? And a change like that is not something you could have prepared for,
No.
right? So that small little change that, hey, prices are going up by 5% unless the customer prepays. Nobody's going to prepay, in my opinion. Um, but that's
Because that's a
something
lot.
where,
That's a big check, or a much
yeah,
bigger
like
check.
if somebody to save 5%, if somebody's paying $1,000 a year, they got to cut me a $12,000 check just to save 5%. That ain't gonna happen, right? So
Yeah.
their bill is just gonna go up by 5%. But the reason I bring that up is things change, right? You got to be fluid. We're in the middle of renewing all of our MSP contracts right now, and then all of a sudden this drops. We're like, oh my God, right?
Got to
And the
redo it
team
all
is
over
kind of
again.
yeah, team is panicking. I'm like, well, funny story. This is why we didn't renew the Microsoft side because I had a feeling something was coming. We're only renewing the MSP side, but this all goes back into the process. So
Right.
just like we have with our compliance and things like that, as new things come up, I don't have to redo the entire process. I just have to
Sure.
update it,
Well, and
right?
I think about the licensing thing. I mean, this seems like it's something that you don't even have to necessarily redo contracts. It's really more of a notice of, or a disclaimer, or an FYI. Hey,
Yeah,
unless you want to switch to annual billing on your 365 licenses as of April, May, whatever it is, it's going up by 5%. You don't have to do any more than that.
yep.
This isn't a contract to change. This is a vendor has made. Here's the new deliverables. And as long as your T's and C's are dialed in, as Brad Gross would say, a certain way, you're just fine. Your job is to let them know and not wait for them to tell you what they want.
But take this back to the compliance conversation, right? To one of the controls.
Yeah,
When a variable changes, a lot of times somebody is just going to go, all right, a variable has changed. I need to go back to start and do it over again. I'm saying, no, no, no. Just just move forward, update and move forward, right? We're not trying to catch the SpaceX rocket ship on the first go, right? Using that as an analogy. He blew up a couple of ships, right? Some dumped in the water,
yeah,
some blew up, things like that. It wasn't perfection from the get-go. And MSPs to get to that cookie, right? They need to send out some nasty tasting cookies, right? And and add a little bit more salt, add a little bit more whatever. I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know what goes into a cookie, but
yeah,
more
yeah,
sugar, not salt. Uh, but it just can't be perfect all the time. I know it's hard hearing for me because I usually am. I'm joking. Um, but you just got to move forward and cycle through. Like I said in the beginning of the call, I'm on my almost third pass of CIS, and
Yeah,
each time the iteration of our controls are getting far better and better, and I'm more excited every time we do it. But I get to the end, like a game, and I start over and now I know what to do better because like certain controls, oh my Lord, the first time we tried it, it took days.
right.
Now the revisions are like, I don't know, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Because it my physical building hasn't changed, right? My inventory hasn't physically changed. How I collect that data may have changed, but I just got to tweak it a little bit.
Well, I think that's a really good way to put this. I think, we've got about 10 minutes left. I think I would like to propose let's share the 10 commandments, if you will, of what it means to go through a framework. Um, and I think the first one is don't allow the enemy of great be the enemy of good, right? Like the just the paralysis that everybody's running into of saying, well, I got to get it to this level. That's not the point of this. And when we talk about the iterations of IG1, IG2, IG3, you have to put into context for those that maybe aren't familiar with how this came about, that the implementation groups were not because you're too small to do it all at once, because they actually put these in place because the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500, they were not able to do it without breaking it into smaller pieces. It's a capability model, and your capability has nothing to do with how many employees you have. Obviously, that can factor into how quickly you can do something, but your capability is defined by your understanding of what it is that you have to do and how to get it done. So just because you have 5 employees doesn't mean you can't do certain things. It just means that you're probably not going to do it with your own internal resources. And I
Yep.
think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They're like, well, until I can afford to hire 25 people to run my knock or my sock, I'm just going to skip this one. It's like, well, no one's proposing that you become an MSSP and have all of these things in place. But if you're evaluating a product or a service, are you prepared for the FTE that comes with managing that? Or does it take your FTE and reduce it? Like those are all things you've got to take into consideration before adding a tool or adding a new process procedure. Like if it's more work than it's worth, reevaluate. And I don't know, I think for me the second commandment would be, if you're waiting until you have perfect, then you're not ready to pursue the trust mark or the CIS framework, because you're never going, it's not a thing that has perfect baked into it, because like we were talking about with the analogy, your cookie is going to constantly change. It's not always going to look the certain way. And at some point, you're just going to go, hey, we have a cookie that actually tastes good. Does it look good? No, it does not look good. But you know what? We had a cookie that looked really good, but it tasted terrible. And you just kind of keep moving through that iteration.
Well, so here's kind of another just using the cookie analogy, right?
Man, you're making me so
Um,
hungry right now.
I know. Well, think about it. When you make a cookie, you don't taste test it all throughout the process. You don't sit there and spoon a cup full of eggs and put it in and be like, this is great, right?
Mm.
You wait until the end
Right.
and then you taste the cookie,
Or at least
right?
until all the ingredients have been mixed together so you can get
Maybe.
salmonella.
But if you like I may or may not have been known to down a tube of cookie
Cookie
dough
dough?
stuff, right?
Yeah.
But 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 still the cookie dough tube isn't what the end cookie tastes like,
No.
right? So put that into a control. Wait until you made the darn cookie before you taste it, right? Stop tasting it midway, going, this tastes terrible. Yes, because it's raw egg.
Well, and it's funny because when you look at CIS, most of the control domains, the first safeguard is actually identifying, like, hey, maybe
Yeah,
you should write down the recipe for your cookie. And then it gives you
yeah,
steps of how to go about doing that. Okay, this is when you mix it. This is when you add the dry stuff to the wet stuff. Like it's all right there. And yet we're hung up on all of them being done at the same time. So we don't do any of them at all.
yeah. And that's a problem I see a lot of our peers making.
Well, so that's 2 commandments that we just made up on the spot. So the third one I think you just identified is like, stop tasting it throughout the process, right? Like
Yeah,
get to a cookie then reevaluate. Because if you don't, you're going to get stuck in that, well, I need to add more vanilla. I need to add more whatever. Like you're just going to not get what you, it will never be what you want. And even when you get the cookie to taste like what you want it to taste like, what are the rest of the employees think in your organization about the cookie?
Yeah, and I think about like a peer review. Uh, so like you watch the Chicago Med or something like that,
Yeah.
and something doesn't go right, and they hold a review, a room full of people, and then they walk through the case, right?
Yeah.
So another thing I see a lot of MSP struggles with, where the person who's making the policy or whatever is dictating and not collaborating. So another one would be collaborate, don't dictate, right?
Yeah. So number four,
Because
collaborate, don't dictate.
yeah, because what I think the process may be sitting on my supposed ivory tower is very different than what is actually happening. I say
Yep.
that as a joke, right? But like if I think the process goes a certain way, well, let's talk to the team because if we get collaborative answers, I'm like, well, I never thought of it that way. And now we're going to come out with a really good recipe for a really good cookie when I have
And
everybody involved.
And it's funny because I was actually going to say the exact same thing verbatim that you just said for number four as well, which, so I would say for number five, then, which is kind of, I'm not sure if this is a bullet point with a number or a bullet point with a bullet point. I think it can stand on its own. I would argue that if everyone in the organization isn't involved in your goals with surrounding a framework, then you're wasting the entire organization's time with the framework. It is a all inclusive or you're not inclusive. And the reality is, this goes back to the whole culture thing. Your employees will choose to follow things that they understand when you give them the answers to their why. If you do not, either you're going to be trying to cycle employees because out of the organization and new ones in, which we know is not a reality that any of us want to pursue, or you are recognizing that maybe what you've put together, if you can't solve for the why, needs to be rewritten.
For sure.
All right, you need to come up with a number six because this is getting harder than I thought.
Yeah. Should have said five. Um, you know, uh, get buy-in, right? Get
Yeah.
it's kind of like when you buy a piece of software and you go, "Hey team, here's the software I want you to deal with." They'll
Yeah.
never respect it,
Nope.
right? But if you go, "Hey, here's three pieces of software I want you to evaluate. Let's figure out which one we like best, pros and cons, all that fun stuff." Not just because they took me to dinner at, IT Nation, but
Yeah.
because the
That does
text will
help.
just never, it does, but the text will never, if they don't have the buy-in, they won't move forward. It'll just be like, that's Charles's wacky software because he got a free dinner, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah. So then I'll say that number seven is if you're doing this alone, you're failing because the reality is it goes back to what you said before. If you've never made a cookie before, then you don't know what a cookie looks like. So unless you have something to model this after, you are basically just swimming in the water and you don't know which way is up or how deep the water is. So get involved in a peer group, get involved in, talk to your vendors, talk to the communities. Like the reality is there's a lot of stuff out there that can at least help you understand what cookies are supposed to look like. If that's the only thing you get out of those communities or peer groups, I would consider that a success. So that's my number seven. You go with number eight. Good luck.
So number eight is going to be know where your products fit. And there's a couple of vendors who I've been helping where like it's gonna start coming more and more prevalent. I think we saw it at PAX 8 Beyond where people were putting little signs on their table, like the ones I don't like, we solve for. I don't like the word solve, but we assist with control for,
Yep.
right? We assist or we map to because just because they quote unquote solve for something doesn't mean you're going to use it that way that they're intending,
Right.
but they
We
can
stop bad
help.
things from happening. Pick us. Right.
Yeah.
Now,
But just know where all of your vendors fit on whatever framework you're working on, right?
so
So
this
like
one, This one
We
might come
lean on
before that.
CIS more.
So this one might come before your eight. So instead of saying this is nine, it could be let's push eight down and nine goes above it. And I think this is the don't go looking for tools and third-party products and services until you have an understanding of the people, process, and maybe then technology. Like you've got to understand the what and the why before you start evaluating whether or not there's a vendor that can help you solve this, because there's two categories that this can fall into. Well, three. So you could find a product or service that helps validate or verify that the tool is being satisfied. We see this in a lot of automation products that help look at the current technology posture within an organization, right? It's not actually solving a safeguard, but it's giving you evidence to support safeguard being addressed. The other one that I think comes to mind is maybe it facilitates, like this is the spreadsheet that houses your inventory. It's not actually being used to get your inventory, right? And then you have things that, to your point, they partially or fully meet a safeguard. But again, if you're just out there Googling, vendor products that meet safeguard 4.3, you're taking a really big risk because it's based on a certain way it's implemented. And if you haven't wrapped your head around that
Yeah.
process and what that looks like and how it impacts your staff, plus what's the risk change? Like, does it put you in a place where like, hey, we want to be the number one or number two in this domain? And by satisfying that security control perfectly, you eliminate yourself from being able to even be in that category. I mean, just think if you decided tomorrow to go after exclusively the DoD space and all the tools you use do not meet the requirements for, say, FedRAMP or some of the things that go into that, you're kind of working yourself out of your own opportunity because
Yeah.
you don't have the right things in place. So I'm not sure necessarily that eight or nine has to go in a certain order. So that leaves us with 10. So that's the last one. It's on you.
I got a good one. Kiss it, right?
Keep it simple, stupid.
That's it, right? Like we don't, the policies do not need to be thou shalt not have factor name like da 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 da.
Right.
Just have two-factor turn, right? Like
Right.
we don't have to be a lawyer that writes out a 32-page dissertation on factors and things like that.
Yeah.
Just say where possible
Right.
enable two-factor.
They're not legally binding documents. They're meant to be
No.
a rule book that gives those that ask a picture of how you follow rules as an organization.
Yeah, I mean, ask Clippy, right? Ask Clippy or Copilot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey,
Clippy's
help me
back
with
from the
this.
dead.
Yeah, and it'll spit out something and you can just kind of dumb it down, right? Keep it simple. The policy doesn't need to be 400 pages because remember, your team has to follow it. So if your policy is 400 pages, they ain't reading it. I ain't reading it, and your auditor ain't reading
I'd say 2 pages is a lot for a policy
it. Yeah, for sure.
because usually you get the creep of the process and procedures are starting to ooze into the policy. And there actually are frameworks out there, and we don't need to go down the rabbit hole of that, that actually look for that. They want that in there. But again, that's for an auditor, right? Like auditors want to see and not have to ask any questions. What we're talking about is the policies that you use to have your organization be successful in your maturing of cyber hygiene.
Yeah, and I will tell you on the sales side of things, customers are now starting to ask, "Hey, what framework?" I had one the other day. I couldn't have been more happier. Like, are you guys NIST certified? I'm like, well, it's not really a thing, but we follow, and I was able to go through the whole Trustmark CIS
Sure.
thing, right? Just because I pay for certain software doesn't mean I have NIST certification, right?
Right.
But I'm like, we do CIS. It's based upon a lot of the same things. And da, 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 da. So that's a far better conversation to have than no.
Right. And
They're
and
just saying no.
And there is a framework coming out at the end of the year that will be an internationally recognized standard called SMB 1001. They may change the name of it, but essentially, if you're an MSP, this is the type of framework that your clients would likely be following. And there's some things in there that are really interesting. And one of them is, do you have, the cyber or the IT professional? And then the second one is like, engaging an MSP. But when you start to walk through some of the safeguards that are in that framework, they're going to ask legitimate questions to you, the MSP, like, hey, are you doing these things too? How do you envision helping us achieve these goals? Because we know that it's important. We're going to see more of that. And the funny part is, as much as we talk about how we may someday be regulated, I think insurance and our clients will determine what we do as an organization. And I think that's pretty impressive to know that the SMB world, especially, is starting to recognize that bad things can happen to them even when they're sleeping. Like the bad guys do not take
Yeah.
time off between 5 p.m. and 7 a.m. or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Holidays always weird me out, right? Because that's when they get really active.
and every day's Black Friday now. Come on, who are we kidding? Like
Yeah,
it starts in June with Amazon. So, like, yeah. Charles, any
exactly.
last things to say to our audience?
Now, just the last thing, if you don't have like a brain trust, right, through a peer group, something like that, people you trust, you need to find that. I'm a big advocate of peer groups because you get to ask really stupid questions all the time, but
Yeah.
in a very safe place.
And you and I both know this. For those of you listening, Charles, what's your LinkedIn?
I think it's just Charles J. Love on LinkedIn.
Got it. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what mine is right now. I just drew a blank, but I'll tell you if you find us on LinkedIn, if we're not connected, connect with us. We're happy to answer questions because we understand that sometimes you have to get some of the initial questions out of the way, and we get it. We know that most MSPs at some point in time know they have a question that sounds really stupid. I kid you not, there are no stupid questions in this space, I promise you. But I get it. It's getting a few of those questions out of the way to realize you're not the first one to have that question. And sometimes when you are the first person, even if it seems trivial, there's somebody else in the same room that was like, I had that question too, and I was afraid to ask it.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave you with a quote, and it was from my freshman English class in high school. He had it on the wall. He said, he who asks a foolish question is a fool for 5 minutes. He who does not ask any questions or a question at all is a fool forever. So there you go. I'd rather feel dumb for 5 minutes if I can get the answer that I'm looking for than to
Yep.
continue down this path of paralysis analysis. So, for those of you who've been listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.